escrow amount to be paid? You say not to exceed, it's approximately up to 450?
No,
Dollars?
what I'm saying is escrow services are provided in Costa Rica by banks, by any financial institution, we call it financieras, could be provided by different private companies that are registered at SUHEF, could be provided by law firms or attorneys. Let me say it, law firms that are registered at SUHEF, or even by any attorney, meaning a physical person also, that are registered at SUHEF. So what it's important is that needs to be registered at SUHEF. This being said, well, obviously that is a service that is provided. So how much those escrow holders will charge? Well, a bank probably will charge much more than a law firm. Why? Because it's too complicated for a bank to hold a little amount and then distribute all this. It's not their business. So they most probably will charge more than a law firm. In the market, as of today, August 2016, what is normal to charge is around 0.25%, which is a quarter of 1% of the amount of the transaction. That is not only the value of the property, it's the amount of the transaction, which means the monies that needs to be transferred because of the value of the property, but also all the taxes and fees and all that amount. And usually will be no less. Anyone will charge less than $450 for that. Why? Because it's not only the custody of the money for a certain period of time, is that all the documentation needs to be checked out, needs to be approved by the escrow, means the escrow has the responsibility of being checked that it's good money, but also needs to disperse the money. And also needs to, the time that it takes to make a wire to the seller, a wire to the realtor. Sometimes there's two realtors, so two different realtors, to the attorney or to the attorneys, and to the notary, and a lot of money needs to be distributed. That's why what it's normal to be charged as of today is around $450 as a minimum. But could be, depends on the amount. Could be 50,000. I don't know. It all depends on the amount of the transaction.
Okay, I understand that. But so you say also like 0.25. So that's the amount, the percentage of the total amount, including the complete sales purchase
of all the amount that
all
the amount that the escrow holder will receive. 0.25%.
So it sounds like attorney and the notary and the escrow can be the same person, the same firm. There's no need for segregation of duties here.
Absolutely. And we have done that several times. Let me give an explanation as we do it. As attorneys, all the work of the attorneys, in our case, will be done by any attorney at Montejo Law. Or 2 or 3, it doesn't matter. It's the same. We will charge exactly the same. It will be internal, how we distribute the work. Now, for the notary services, that will be only charged by the notary. For example, I am a notary and I'm an attorney. So I could make the due diligence and I could be the notary as well. But I could ask another attorney at the law firm, you will do all this and I'll be just a notary. It's the same. And then the escrow services, I could be an escrow holder or the law firm could be an escrow holder. In our case, we have a company that is called Montejo Trust. You can see it here and it says authorized by SUHEF. Okay? We prefer to have a company which is the escrow holder. Totally a part of the law firm and the responsibilities of attorneys and notaries. Here it is. But actually it's the same. It's the same group. So the answer, for example, in our case is yes, we can provide all the services. The buyer is the one that is sending the money, right? So if the buyer already choose X as the notary, which it's his attorney, is the attorney as well usually, makes sense that this same person or this same group will keep the money, will hold the money in escrow for him, and he will, and this person will feel very comfortable that it's not going to X, Y, or Z. So the answer is yes. You don't need to segregate this into different law firms, etc. At least under the point of view of the buyer, usually is not segregated at all.
On a different subject too, talking about all this transfer fees, and it sounds like the buyer is the one who absorbs most of it. It sounds like it's financially prudent to buy an unimproved property like vacant land, build something on it, considering your cost of construction is reasonable, and then when you sell it, you're passing on those transfer fees onto the buyer, because at that time, I guess it would be appraised. And I guess specifically, when does the new appraisal value goes on the book and you start paying higher taxes on it once you build something?
Okay, you're asking several questions in one. Okay, let me first answer the first part. Who pays those costs? It all depends on the parties. The law does not say it's Mr. A or Mr. B. The law does not say is buyer or is seller. All what the law wants is the government to get paid, and the notary wants to get paid, and everybody wants to get paid. So the parties could decide who will pay. Now, what is normal? Let me tell you, it varies a little bit if the transaction is between Costa Rican, buyer, seller, than if a foreigner is involved, telling you totally the truth. The practice between Costa Ricans is they go half and half. That is the first option between Costa Ricans, half and half in all costs. Second option, buyer will pay 100% of the costs, okay, except for legal advice for the seller. I'm talking between Costa Ricans. If a foreigner is involved, it goes the other way around. Usually the buyer pays all the costs except legal advice of the seller. And as a second option, half and half. It all depends on how it was negotiated. And I need to tell you that what is very normal, what every seller is expecting if the buyer is a foreigner, is that the foreigner will pay in full. Except, as I said, seller's advice and, of course, real estate commissions that are usually paid by the seller. But that is not part of the legal cost of the transaction. Now, the value of the property it's a different topic. Once more, the value of the topic could vary on market value, bank's value, fiscal value. So, if someone buys a vacant lot in 100, just to say a number, let's say it was valued and recorded at the public registry and the city in 50. And there is a deed that shows 100 now. Well, the new value would be 100 and will be registered at the public registry and eventually will be registered also at the city. So taxes are going to be paid from then on based on 100 instead of 50. That was the value that was paid. Now, any owner needs to declare the value of the property at the city hall every 5 years. Every 5 years. They don't do it, the city will send an appraiser and will appraise the property with whatever is in the property at that moment and will give the new value. So my best recommendation would be every 5 years, owner, just go and make your declaration, fill the forms, because you are going to give the value. So if it was a vacant lot and 5 years later you have a house, now you need to declare the house. And obviously you're going to need to increase the amount, but you're going to have the ability to give the value to that house. And that value, it's really what we call the fiscal value, is the value for tax purposes. So telling the truth is not all the time the real market value, because the owner will not declare exactly the real value, which is totally different from the market value. Now let's say that with improvements, in 5 years the owner declared that in 200. Okay, now from there on, taxes will be paid based on those 200. Now lot and house. 1 year later, it's sold in 300. Okay, now the new value is 300, not the 200. Even though 5 years hasn't passed yet, the new one is 300. Or let me give another example. The owner goes to the bank and asks for a loan, and there is a mortgage in the property, okay, for 300. Now the new value is 300. Since has been increased and the bank has accepted the value of the property is more because it's giving a loan for that amount. So it varies case by case.
But if I did it for business and I've sold it before 5 years of the next appraisal date, at what point does it come in? Before the sale happens, somebody needs to go out and appraise the property, or?
No, because you're going to sell based on the market value, obviously. The appraisal will be done if some of the parties wants really to know if that is the real value, which will be done pretty much by the buyer, not by the seller. My price is 300. If you want to appraise the property, go ahead, do it. Your appraisal will come with 250 or 350. I don't care, but that's your deal. My selling price is 300.
I have a question. If the potential buyer, is looking at a home that previously was considered a luxury home, but because the price dropped, it's below now. When he buys it, does that still apply?
If you have already declared that as a luxury tax, believe me, it's going to be very difficult to change that. You can maintain the price. That's different. You know, if it was priced in 400, just to say a number, and now the real price is 350, just keep it in 400 and nothing is going to happen. Or if it was declared 400, went up to 500 and now it's in 400, just keep it there, okay? But if it really drops down, you need to prove, but not now the city, you need to prove our IRS, our Internal Revenue Office, which is called Tributación Directa, that there is no house anymore or that something has really come down. Otherwise, they will not accept it and you would need to continue paying the tax.
Okay, and the second question is, if the buyer, a foreigner, bought a property and wants to do renovations and bring in extra money, he still has to go through the lawyer? Can he do the same process
No, for a renovation, all what you need is to have an engineer in order to make the plans that are needed, and you all the time need a permit. All the time. So those permits, you will get it at the city hall.
Yeah, sorry, I meant money-wise, bringing in the money, extra money to do the renovations from abroad.
No. You don't need the attorney. You don't need an escrow holder to bring money into Costa Rica. Let me be very clear on that. Okay? You can bring them. Now, how are you going to bring the money? That's question one. And question two, in a real estate transaction, how is that going to be handled? It's another story. And let me just go back a little bit. If you're going to bring money into Costa Rica, you need to have an account to bring it to, right? Okay, so if you're a foreigner, you need to go and open an account. So you need to go to a bank and you need to explain the bank what are you going to do, and the bank will decide if they are going to open the account for you or not. Meaning, it's not that easy to open an account for a foreigner, okay? And usually it's just a savings account and you need to prove the same thing. So for the real estate transaction, that is why it's so recommended to have an escrow holder. Now, for the day-to-day, an escrow holder is not a bank account and it's not a checking account, okay? no escrow holder is going to receive 1,000 here and 15 there and then pay Mr. A and Mr. B and Mr. C because of the renovations. That is your deal. So how to do it? You owner now, you either open an account or you negotiate this with the construction company or whoever in order to handle the money. But you don't need the attorney.
Okay, so basically, when you're bringing in the money, you're just dealing straight with the bank and you're explaining what it's for, period, if you have a bank account.
Exactly. And the bank will decide if they open the account or not for you and if they accept the money or not.
Okay, this has to do with the luxury tax. That $237,000 value, is that the value placed at the municipality for the purposes of property taxes? No, or
No,
what?
the 250 or 237, it's the value that the house just building has. Who will give that value? Well, I cannot do it. Probably no realtor could do it. Probably no owner could do it. You will need to hire an engineer and say, okay, look the house. Oh yes, the house has a value, house has a value of 200. Okay, you don't need to pay. Now he says, well, this house has a value, after making all the appraisal, of course, of 275. Okay, now you need to pay. But you need to add to those 275 the value of the lot, which is 100, just to say a number. Okay, now you pay the tax based on 375. Now, of course, if you're paying that luxury tax based on 375, guess which is the fiscal value of the property now? 375. So you're going to pay to the city a quarter 1% based on 375. So you're paying both ways.
Okay. So what if you buy a house and the owners have not been paying the luxury tax? What does that do to how does it affect you as a buyer?
It all depends on the house. It's case to case. It's difficult to answer. If you hire an engineer and the engineer gives, if you think that the house is a luxury house, then you need to hire an engineer. The engineer will give the value. If the engineer says you need to pay luxury tax, then you need to discuss with the seller of either you will declare that once you purchase and you will pay from there on, or that this has happened a lot of times, that you say, okay, I'm going to purchase this if you make the declaration, you have everything in order, and you pay this year of luxury taxes, and then I will go from there on, okay? And regrettably, I have seen several cases that even though it's a luxury tax, no one declares that, waiting till the government sends an appraisal to appraise the property.
Okay, let's say you're in that situation where the seller is now going to declare it so you can buy it. Since the seller has not declared from the time that the tax started up until today, is there consequences for that not having been
If the
done?
government sues the owner, yes, they might ask for the past due taxes since the house was built.
How does the buyer protect himself from that situation, or does he?
If he already accepts, there is no way of protecting.
But prior, okay, let's say he's not already accepted, and he knows the luxury tax issue, and he knows the seller hasn't paid. How does he protect himself from that back?
There is no way. That's. Go ahead.
It should be part of the due diligence.
Exactly. Part of that. That's why I added that in the due diligence. As is it a luxury house or not? And if it is, then will be a discussion. And once more, we get into a point in which seller wants to sell, buyer wants to buy, the notary wants to get the fees, and the realtor definitely wants to get the fees. So everybody makes like this, right? Let's not talk that much. Now, being totally responsible on this, well, if it is a real, because that margin in which we can play, I mean, it's if the house is a real value of 300, just to say a number, we can stay still play on that. But if the house has a value, as house, of $500,000,
$1 million.
you cannot play on that. I mean, you need to pay the luxury taxes, otherwise I will be responsible. Or you need to reduce me the price, but that will be a negotiation. I mean, if you ask me as an attorney, need to be paid, period. Now, how you negotiate that? I could say, don't pay it, take the risk, reduce the price, just to say something. Or just take the risk. You know that you need to pay. But you cannot go then after the seller saying, hey, you didn't pay it. Well, that was your due diligence, why you didn't do it.
Okay, thank you. It's about the same because, okay, it's a law, right? The luxury taxes are right now. So I have a $250,000 home, is a luxury home. Or say I already have somebody and told me that was the price of my house. So I have to go voluntarily to the government and say, okay, I have a luxury home, I'm going to start paying that. Or it's an enforcement that the law is doing. How will they know that I have to? It's like I know I have to pay taxes, property taxes.
You're supposed to go voluntarily and declare and pay. Now, we have an IRS, we have an Internal Revenue Office here, and they have appraisers, and they are doing it. Slow, yes, and they are doing it so slow that there are people taking the risk. But once they get into your property, and if you haven't declared, then they are going to appraise the property. They are going to say how much or what is the value of that property and how much you need to pay.
All right, and one last thing about that. Let's say I waited, because that's the way we do it in Costa Rica. So I have this $250,000 home, and then I waited 5 years to go and declare. So I start paying after that 5 years that I declare, starting on that date.
Yes, it's very difficult that the government is going to go back.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not saying that it's not going to. I'm saying it's very difficult.
Okay, gracias.